Assalamu alaikum, run things rude boy. Nabil Aziz, becomingthealphamuslim.com and the Becoming the Alpha Muslim podcast. So here's the thing. I'm getting older. I'm in my mid 30s and I'm a father. My health is becoming more of a concern to me. It's getting harder to keep the weight off and I don't recover as well as I used to. And I can't eat as much as I used to without putting on weight. Sometimes I get, indigestion now when I eat certain things. It never used to happen to me. I have a great, digestive system and stomach. So I've been, more concerned with my overall health. And that's why I decided to bring today's guest on. He's someone I follow on Twitter. And I think he has a very interesting take on fitness, nutrition, health, from a holistic perspective. I'm going to read an excerpt from one of his recent blog posts. What is health? People need help with their health. They seek out help. People don't care about the nitty-gritty of exercise. They believe they should exercise because they desire change. People want more fulfilling lives. They're older, they want to age well, they don't want to slowly feel like they are dying, so they seek out exercise. People feel unhealthy. They're overweight, stressed, low energy. They are discontent. People ask for more strength, more muscle, improved body composition, better eating habits. That's what they ask for, but that's not what they need. In a vacuum, none of those things mean anything. In the context of a life, they can mean everything. They want to feel different. They want change to be a better version of themselves right now. So talk about diet because it improves overall energy. No one wants to be tired out of their own life. Talk about muscle because it gives you the strength to handle your life. No one wants to feel frail and at the mercy of illness and fatigue. Talk about strength because it makes you an active participant in spending time with family and friends. Talk about exercise because it gives you a psychological outlet for stress and is a means of self-love. Talk about what has meaning. My guest today is Alexander Juan Antonio Cortes. He's a personal trainer, published author who writes for various blogs. He's working on a book right now. He podcasts. He runs a Facebook group. He releases videos. He periscopes. All-around accomplished guy, and I love his take on health and fitness. As someone who blogs for men and talks about issues of masculinity. So I'll let him introduce himself. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Nabil. It's good to be on your podcast.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. We've been, interacting back and forth on Twitter, and I've been meaning to get you on for a while now. So why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? I know I gave you a short introduction. You can tell them a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, relative to myself, I've been a personal trainer now for approximately 8 years. My actual background, believe it or not, was I never intended to work in the health field. I was a trained dancer, ballet dancer actually, and my actual degree it's an art degree in performance choreography. So this was some years back, almost 10 years ago. During that time, though, when I was training, I got pretty severely injured. I tore my left hamstring tendon, ruptured it pretty badly, broke my foot, had a hip fracture, mild hip fracture. And in the process of rehabbing myself and getting myself back to functionality, I end up this sort of diving into health and training and strength training. And since then, I've taken it this in different directions. And relative to the fitness field now, I've turned my career to something where I am considered, to a degree, an authority. But my perspective on health has always been vastly different because of my background. So, like I said, what brought me into studying health and to practicing it and trying to teach it to other people, it was not an aesthetic desire to necessarily be super buff and super muscular or to look a certain way. It was to live a certain way and be able to perform and move in the way I wanted to. And relative to the average person, relative to the average man today, you can train and you can make changes in your life to try to be healthier, to exercise, or to eat right. But these things, like as you said, in a vacuum, they don't really have any meaning. If you're trying to improve your role in the world as a man, improve your identity as a human being, improve your masculinity, you have to do things in such a way as to being conducive to how you are living. So doing them just of and by themselves, it's not really going to accomplish anything. It has to be relative to a greater picture. So that's my, I guess, intro in philosophy, the short version anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You said that you've become an authority in your niche. How come most of us have never heard of you? Like, the only reason I have heard of you is through Mike Cernovich.
Yes.
And you're not a Kiefer, you're not a Chad Waterbury, you're not a John Romaniello, but you seem to be very accomplished and highly respected. I mean, you write for John Meadows on Mountain Dog Diet, and you write for Elite FTS. So, where have you been?
Oh yeah, no, that's it's a fair question. It's an interesting position relative to the fitness market. So I would divide this sort of into, there's two realms to this. You have the popular market, which is the consumer. So someone that is seeking out information, that is, just trying to improve their own life. Then you have like the internal fitness market, which is, the people that are the professionals. Within the professional side of things, I'm fairly well known for the reason being that I've always had this is overly simplistic, but I've always had a philosophical slant to all of my work. The upside to that is it's made me very distinctive, within the realm. But the downside being it's not always digestible to the average person. So I can write on a level of just talking about exercise, talking about, here's a series of fat burning workouts. Here's the best way to, build your biceps, something of that nature. That's relatively easy to do. But my passion, so to speak, lies in, the thinking portion of it. And that has, I know for a fact, limited my audience for a long time, since reading it, if you are someone where you're looking for very technical or just very concrete information, nothing else, you're not necessarily looking to be made to think. You just want something that you just want a workout to follow, and that's it. And while I can do that, and I do have a lot of information within that regards, my overall breadth of content is always focused more on the, as I said, the philosophical side, the mental, emotional, spiritual side of things. It's not been so much the physical aspect.
Yeah, anyone who reads your website, alexanderjuanantoniocortes.com, will immediately notice that. I mean, you talk about one of your articles is how training arms is like a spiritual experience. Do you want to elaborate on that a bit?
Yes. So training arms like this is a good example. So you have the superficial physical aspect of exercise, which if you're a man and you want to have a presentation of your life of you being a strong person, of you being strongly masculine, it would behoove you to be physically fit. And, training arms, that is something that relative to really any culture on earth, it's rather universal. Having muscular arms is a sign of strength. So how does that carry over into something as being more meaningful? Relative to how you live your life, you have to consider what is the perception of strength. Again, it goes back to the hot, sort of like the hot, cold, negative, positive vacuum aspect. For human beings, for us to comprehend anything, we always have to think in terms of opposite, and we always have to have frame. So when we train arms, if I tell you to go in the gym, I want you to get more muscular. On a personal level, that will be self-satisfying to you. And perhaps even almost a hedonistic way, that you'll look better. Your arms will be, as you said, they'll be bigger. They'll be more prominent. But on a social level, to the rest of your life, that will have a transference to how people perceive you. And that has immense impact. So you have to consider that when you go to the gym. Now, it doesn't have to be the sole reason why you train, but that positive feedback from your life at large, that will reinforce the habit of training arms far more than you just doing it for yourself. I work in the bodybuilding field, and there is something to be said for sort of the soloist bodybuilder. You have gentlemen who are profoundly muscular with how they look, but they have no real life. They exist only in the mirror, and that is it. And for myself and for me, speaking to a man saying that I want you to live to your highest potential, that is not enough. Simply being a shell of a person and looking good to yourself from the outside, that is not enough. So how's training arms a spiritual aspect? Training arms will carry over into every aspect of your being if you really consider it, if you really think about it. So on one level, it's satisfying to get the pump. It feels good. On another level, that could affect your health, your marriage, your professional stature. That could affect how you get promoted. That could affect how you are perceived in the workplace and whether you move up and whether you don't. So the implications are very far-reaching.
Yeah, so that's so as the why gets bigger, the incentive to act to achieve that why becomes stronger, right? So you become more motivated to actually live a healthy lifestyle because it has a lot more carryover than just how you look in the mirror. Would that be correct?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, as I'm saying all these things, I don't expect everybody to get this in the sensibility of, oh wow, now I understand all these things. Now I'm going to think about it all the time. It's not necessary that you consider all of it. It's just that you can ask yourself the question and you have the awareness. So if you were to take everything I said and, as you just did, reduce it down, you now have a different perspective of, what, if I go to the gym and I start doing this, if I make the commitment, it's going to have a lot more positive effect, on my life than just how I look. And that is good. And my incentive to do it, that's now increased, markedly compared to before.
You talk about completing the circle, actually. So, is it outside in or is it inside out? And you say that it's both. So even if you don't think about it consciously, just the act of doing it, you're gonna see those changes in your life. And then if you by some chance realize those changes, then it's working inside out as well, and you become, I guess more, internally motivated to do those things, right?
Yes. Yeah, that is something that it's become popular of late to speak of mindset, and Mike Cernovich has made this very popular, talking about mindset, talking about your mentality. And this is something that I personally said this over about 4 or 5 years ago, where mentality equals physicality, and physicality equals your mentality. They're the same thing. Neither one is more prominent than the other. So you can approach something and change things externally, and that over time will have an internal effect. Or you could think about things internally. You could be very introspective, and then you could set about changing your external environment, your external body, your external life. Both ways are going to work. Which one works for you yourself, that's going to be dependent much more just on your own personality. But as you just said, eventually, if you continue on, whether it's internal, external, wherever you start, you will make a circle. You will complete a cycle where both things are happening at the same time relative to each other.
And we write, both of us write a lot for a male audience. So how does a man's mental and physical state affect his masculinity?
Well, masculinity, I always seek to sort of define this first, and since you'll hear different definitions of what masculinity is, what I put forth, I define it fairly sharply in a very fundamental level, in that a man, the nature of a man is that this is, I mean, this is not secular. This is getting more spiritual. But if you are to honor God and worship God and honor life, then you must be able to protect yourself. So you have self-protection, and you must be able to protect others. So a man, he must be able to take care of himself. And if he is to have a larger role in the world and on society, he must be able to in some way protect others and have that be mutual. So that's one, you have protection. And then number two, the second fundamental principle is that you have the ability to provide. So a man, or rather masculinity, is characterized by ability. It's characterized by capability. You have protection and you have provision. If you cannot do either of those things, or you can't do them well, then you can become a liability to yourself, and you become a liability to others. So in that sense, once you are a liability, then you cannot, as I said, you cannot honor or worship properly in, whatever religion you want to pick, but you will not be able to do it to its capacity. A man that is not well cannot pray. So your physical stamina then, and your physical energy, and your mental state that comes from that is hugely impactful upon your masculinity. If you lack physical energy, if you lack physical strength, you're more likely to become ill. Your productivity will decrease. Your cognitive sharpness, your cognitive clarity, that will decline. And that's going to have an effect on all of your decisions and all of your actions that you take. So, being, to say it simplistically, being low energy, having poor stamina, that's going to affect all of your cognitive, conscious mental decisions. If you know that you are not up to par, so to speak, for a challenge, to snuff for a position or for a new endeavor, you're not going to do it. And that's going to limit your self-improvement. That's going to limit just your life in general. So, masculinity and health and physicality for a man, it is about maximizing your potential and then removing yourself as an obstacle. It is often said in many realms that, what is man's greatest obstacle? It is himself. If you can remove yourself as an obstacle, then your potential is essentially unlimited. You can do anything. You can be anything. You can do everything to the maximum. If you are always in your own way, then you're going to live a life that is more than likely less to your satisfaction than you would like.
Yeah, so that sort of reminds me of this, this slogan where you have to be a man before you can be a gentleman.
Yes.
And it also reminds me, I was reading this blog article by Victor Pride one time, and he was it was an entire article about Mike Cernovich. And as he was going through the article, he posted a picture of Mike Cernovich when Mike Cernovich was a lot bigger, and then he starts talking about, from the moment I saw him, I knew this guy was a peaceful man, or he was a happy man. Even though Cernovich at that time looked, extremely large and angry looking, and he had a very stern expression on, you sort of recognize that for him to sort of be that way, it allows him to, exercise mercy whenever he would like to, and be compassionate and be happy and be easygoing, because he has the ability to protect himself and those around him, right?
Yes, yeah, no, that is a very succinct way of putting it. Yeah, when you are, I want to say at your peak, but when you feel and that you are physically capable, and that you have, let's just say, you have your mental resolve on point, it puts you at ease with the world at large, because you know that you can defend yourself, you can protect yourself, you have the means to, create and do what you want. When you are physically weak and you are infirm and mentally that you're not there, to use that phrase, you're always going to be insecure. You will lack confidence, you will be fearful, and it will show, it will project. Everyone has probably encountered at some point or another a gentleman, or a man with a Napoleon complex, or the guy that has like the little man syndrome, or just a man in general that is very insecure about his position relative to other men. And you don't see that in strong men. You know, that is a characteristic of essentially weakness. So for someone like Cernovich, where I've talked to my personally, like he can obviously come across as being, a hard ass or being very rough. But in reality, he is someone that is very at ease with himself. And he would not be that way if he was the kind of guy that is unhealthy, insecure, and physically unfit. He would not. He would be the kind of guy that is very negative, that is very denigrating of other men, and is just very critical. What comes with peace is acceptance. What comes with weakness is oftentimes just a criticism of the world at large because you don't like it and it makes you ill at ease with yourself.
Yeah, one thing I sort of try to explain to my audience and other Muslims in general is that the Prophet Muhammad, he's renowned for his mercy, but that mercy is actually only as much of a virtue that it is because he had the ability to lay waste to his enemies. If it was just mercy and nothing else, if he didn't have the ability to enforce his will on his surroundings, it would sort of be a trait that is weakness.
Yeah, no, precisely. That's a situation when you are, speaking of the ability to be merciful or the act of being benevolent. If that's coming from somebody that is a strong person and that full well they could be quite the opposite. So how do we define existence? How does man understand his point in life? We define it through opposites. We define it through there being light and dark, good and bad. If someone is only one way, let's just say they are dark, they are, let's say let's just say they are, they're someone that they are an emotional thief, they're emotionally parasitic, they're emotionally manipulative. That person cannot truly know mercy or offer it to somebody. They cannot, because what they are is somebody that uses it solely for their own gain. They're not offering mercy as a show of respect for you. They're offering essentially what is a fake faux mercy for the benefit of themselves. In contrast, when mercy is coming from somebody that is actualized and somebody that is strong, somebody that has power, that is mercy because they are offering respect. They are offering that they will honor you, and they are offering that I understand your position and that I'm not doing this for you, for myself. I'm doing this for you because I have it within me to change. I have it within me to see a different situation, to see your perspective. So, that is something that, in your day-to-day life, you have to consider that when you're dealing with people. If someone's going to do you a favor, are they doing it for you, or are they doing it out of respect, or are they doing it for themselves for the sake of manipulation? The same if someone's offering you help. Are they doing it truly out of benevolence, or are they doing it because they think they can extract something later on, and this is a means to their end? And it goes both ways. That is very black and white. I'm speaking in absolutes, but you can characterize people by how they offer help and how they offer a hand to others. Is it for you? Is it for them? Or ideally, it should in some sense be for both. But don't trust somebody that grabs your hand. Do not trust somebody that takes your hand in theirs and holds the other hand with a knife behind their back. They're gonna get you in the end.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's that's enough philosophy for now. Let's talk some shop. Yeah. So my target for this particular podcast is people of my age, sort of slightly older millennials, 30 plus, I guess. What would you say are the main health markers for a 30 plus male? Then when they're starting to get older, they're not a young buck anymore. What are the main things that they should focus on?
So when you are getting into your 30s, there's a few. This is fairly easy. There's a few basic markers that you want to be aware of. The first one, and I would say for every guy, if you are 30 or just beyond, to get this calculated right now, find out what your body composition is. So to explain that, you have body weight, which is just what you weigh. That could be in pounds or kilos. So that's a measure of your weight against gravity. Body composition refers to how much lean body mass you have, which is bone and muscle, and how much fat mass you have. So it's expressed as a percentage. So this, for example, let's say you are 220 pounds and your body fat percentage is 21%, which means you have 79% lean mass. Ideally, for a man, you want your body composition to be at least 85% or above in lean body mass, and no more than about 15% in regards to fat mass. So this is where like body fat percentage comes in. So like a guy that's really ripped, let's say, will be 8% body fat, or a lot of guys, they think if they're 10% body fat, they'll be muscular. But for a guy that's 30 plus, what you're looking at with this number in finding out your lean body mass and your fat mass is that you want to preserve your lean body mass as much as possible. And ideally, you want to increase it. So if you weighed 220 pounds at the start of your 30s, let's say, and you had 15% body fat, and now you're 39 and you weigh 230 pounds, and you find out that you're 21% body fat, then your fat mass has gone up, which in that case, that means your lean body mass also has probably gone down. That has major implications upon your health, because as you age, your lean body mass is going to be the primary determinant of your quality of life. The less muscle you have as you age, the more health risks increase. And when I say health risks, I'm just referring to everything that's very broadly: cardiovascular risk, cardiovascular incident, cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, high blood pressure, likelihood of having let's say a broken hip, or having osteoporosis, having your bone density degrade. The higher your lean body mass when you're 30, the better your quality of life will be into your 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. So you want to know your body composition. That's basic. That's probably number one. Number two, the other health marker, testosterone levels. Now, testosterone, it is the male hormone. It is what determines, essentially your overall state of health as a man. Testosterone is measured as a range. Normal testosterone levels are defined as about 270 to about 1,100. So it's a very big range. And that's referring to parts per billion. So the easy answer is that it's your total testosterone. How much testosterone do I have in my body? It's going to be anywhere from about 300 to, let's just say, 1,100. As you age, your testosterone levels will drop year by year and decade by decade. The more testosterone levels go down, the more lean body mass will go down, and then again, the more risk factors will go up for your health. So knowing your testosterone levels at the start of your 30s, or just even whatever age you are right now, very crucial. Other factors that play a major role: finding out your vitamin D levels. A lot of people today, modern society, are deficient in vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually a hormone. It contributes to testosterone production, contributes to a lot of health effects. It's just very critical for health. You want to find out if you're vitamin D deficient. Iron levels. If your iron levels are too high, this is something that men suffer from and women do not. It is unique to men. But iron levels, you want to get your ferritin levels checked. And ferritin levels are, it's a related marker of iron levels in the body. If ferritin levels are really high, that means your iron levels are really high. That dramatically affects your cardiovascular health. So you'd want that to go down. So you have your body composition, you have your testosterone levels, you got vitamin D levels, and then you have iron levels. Beyond that, things like I could say blood pressure. Blood pressure is important. That's very basic. You don't want to have really high blood pressure. If your cholesterol is really high, that could be an indicator of cardiovascular risk. That depends on your family history. But relative to what has the most far-reaching effects, if your body composition is healthy, your testosterone levels are healthy, vitamin D levels are healthy, iron levels are healthy, you're probably going to live a long time. You're going to maximize your lifespan, to put it simply.
Okay, so let's 80-20 this for the audience. What's the strategy to sort of achieve those four main health markers that you just stated right now?
Yeah. So putting that into action, for body composition, diet is obviously going to play a role. If you are a man and you are at any age, you want to be eating relatively healthy. You want to be eating at caloric maintenance. So you don't want to be undereating. You don't want to be overeating. With diet, you want to have your protein intake fairly high, a gram per pound of body weight or 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. Easiest way to calculate out protein in your diet. High protein diet, isocaloric, meaning maintenance diet in regards to calories, that will keep you going. Resistance training, 3 to 4 days a week. Could be total body, could be a body part split, could be 5 days a week, but you want to be stimulating growth in your muscle tissue, really just 24/7 on a consistent basis. Beyond that, if you have the diet in order, you have exercise in order, supplementation then could be helpful. Taking vitamin D3, very useful. For iron levels, to control that, there's a supplement called Curcumin, which I recommend to almost everybody over the age of 30. It's an anti-inflammatory. It keeps your joints healthy. It has a lot of positive effects on the body. It's in regards to keeping overall inflammation levels low. It also acts as essentially like an iron sort of dispenser. It will help control iron levels in the body. Simply doing those things will ensure health for the long term. Diet, exercise, vitamin D, and then just taking some supplemental curcumin.
For those who don't, who are unaware, curcumin is turmeric, right?
Yes. Okay. Yes, it is. If you cook with it, actually, that's a very easy way to actually get into the diet. If you don't cook with it, then it's one of those just very cheap supplements. I would actually recommend that over taking like a multivitamin. If it's very cheap, you can take a few capsules a day, and that will make a positive impact pretty swiftly.
Yeah, I think brown people get enough curcumin in their diet from the curry that they eat.
Probably. If you're a lighter skin fellow, probably not so much. Yeah, it's pretty popular, in Mideast cooking.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say we have a guy. He's over 30 years old. Let's say he's over 20% body fat, getting close to obese range, and he's never lifted, or he used to lift and he's completely detrained now. What are the like 1 or 2 or 3 things that he should focus on immediately?
So immediately he would need to get his diet, his caloric intake under control. There's no fancy way to doing that per se, but what I recommend to everybody, if you are new to health or trying to get back into it, start tracking your food intake. There's a variety of apps that can do this. MyFitnessPal, you can write it down yourself, what you eat on a day-to-day basis. But you want to start building the awareness of what you're eating. So diet, you have to get that under control. There's no going around that. In regards to getting back into the gym and lifting, you have to keep things reasonable. So I recommend 3 days a week is a very fair starting point. I have a Genesis program that's written for men that are new to training or getting back into training. But 3 days a week of training, resistance training, total body. Your goal at this stage, you want to be a monk. You don't want to be a hero. So your 20s are past you. Going to the gym and being stupid and being senseless and trying to go for broke, you're more likely to get injured or set yourself back than you are to push yourself forward. So as I say, you want to be a monk. You want to be diligent with your training and consistent with it. And you're seeking consistency of effort and just showing up and doing it. There's no need to be fancy or to, as I said, take things to the edge. But a reasonable lifting program, total body, a few movements for each muscle group, doing that even ideally 3 days a week, that will start improving your body composition. That will start getting you healthier. You combine that with a reasonable diet of tracking your food intake and being aware of what you're eating, and that in itself, over a period of months, you could probably drop off 5 or 6% body fat just doing that and nothing else.
Yeah. When you talk about diet on your blog, I remember I think it was a podcast that I was listening to. You talk about managing your energy. So, eat the way that manages your energy the best or gives you the most energy. So, what would be, I guess, I mean, would that depend on person? Somebody might be doing like an isocaloric diet, and another person might be doing, a paleo diet, and another person might be doing like a very low carb diet. Me, for example, I don't know why I do, terribly with, carbs. I have like I get the itis that black people call it, after eating, a bunch of carbs, like very sleepy, very drowsy, completely lethargic. But low carb diet, I can eat like 2 steaks and like 3 eggs cooked in butter, and I'm like totally fine. I'm ready to go.
That's actually a very good point. So for the gentlemen listening who might not be aware of this, there are very prominent ethnic differences in insulin sensitivity and food sensitivity. So this requires knowing where your ancestors are from, knowing your lineage. But the reason why there is such a variety to diets and to recommendations is simply for the reason being that depending on your ethnicity, where you're from historically, whether it be, let's just say, South Africa, or Sub-Saharan, or Northern European, or Mesoamerican, or Persian, Middle Eastern, Indian, that all plays a major role in how you digest food. So if you are, let's say, for example, for yourself, you're describing how, with carb intake, it knocks out your energy levels, and it brings your energy down. Yeah, that's very common in essentially what you could say Middle Eastern, oftentimes Arab, or Far Eastern populations, where they will have relatively poor insulin sensitivity. So you'll have a vastly compensatory insulin response to just a small amount of carbs, and it makes your energy levels crash. So for someone like yourself, you find that yes, lower carbs will suit your energy, will suit your life a lot better. For someone that, let's say, is Southeast Asian, let's just say Filipino or Japanese, they tend to do much better on higher carb diets simply because their insulin response is much lower. So they can have very high carb intake, and their blood glucose levels will not rapidly shoot up and then drop back down. So for the gentleman listening to this right now, you'll understand that your own response to food, it's going to be based on your ethnicity, and it would actually be it would be conducive for you to sort of eat as your own personal ancestors did, and to eat your sort of ancestral ethnic cooking. There's probably a reason why your culture favors certain foods over others, and it's likely because you digest those things better. So when it comes to improving your diet, you really want to pay attention to your food intake and what either brings your energy up or brings it down. And that's something that I recommend, with clients, that they document in a journal, where you just write down over the course of the day what you eat. If you notice that you are consuming foods that are constantly leaving you tired, fatigued, then you want to make changes and switch over to things that don't do that.
That's actually fascinating, because I'm Sri Lankan and ethnically Malay, and Sri Lankans eat rice and curry for breakfast, lunch, and dinner sometimes. So that's quite strange, because that would make me atypical among Sri Lankans. What I'm assuming is, when I was in my mid-20s, I went on a ketogenic diet on like an extended period of time, almost like a year. And I'm thinking I did myself an injury, in that my body just refuses to accept carbs anymore.
You know what? That is in a way possible. So I lived in India for a period of time, back in 2014, for about 5 months. And Indians, India has a huge variety of ethnic populations within the whole continent, but they tend to have very high carb intake. However, their body composition tends to be higher body fat. And in Indians, this is stereotypical, but they're often, their own stereotype is that they call themselves, they're known for being lazy. They like to sleep a lot. They like to be generally just lying around. And I was describing this to them when I was there, where I was pointing out to them that, a lot of your meals, culturally you characterize this, well, this is the food we eat and we love this food. But if you notice your overall health, it's not really to your benefit. So it's just something that, maybe it could be a lack of awareness.
or if it's a case where, you're high energy from eating this way, then, by all means keep doing it. Relative to your own situation, though, when you change your diet for a period of time, especially something like a ketogenic diet, that is called epigenetic changes on how you digest food. So epigenetics is referring to the portion of your DNA that is actually flexible in how your genetics are expressed. So you can, in fact, change your genes to a degree. You can change your genetics. Ketogenic dieting is very metabolically disruptive for many reasons, because it's a profound change in your body's overall energy metabolism. But it's highly possible that you could have just changed your digestion almost permanently, where if you were eating that way for quite a while, then trying to revert back to, let's just say, a more normal-ish, or more, let's just say like macro balanced diet, it's probably going to be difficult. You may essentially be in a state where you are permanently inclined towards lower carbs.
Wow. Okay. Another thing I notice is that in Ramadan, when we fast, that problem doesn't really happen to me. So I can eat as many carbs as I want, and I would still be okay. So does that have some sort of relationship there? Is that going like prolonged times without carbs will sort of give you sort of better insulin sensitivity?
Yes. So with Ramadan, you're fasting all day. It's a month long. You're not eating or drinking anything. Now, what happens during prolonged periods of fasting is that you have something called autophagy, which increases. So autophagy, it's simply a term that refers to your body cells cleaning up waste product in the cell. So autophagy increases. Your body essentially, let's just say, it sort of rids itself of toxins and impurities and buildup and byproduct, which there's a reason why fasting leaves people feeling, sort of very light and very cleansed, both physically and spiritually. There's physical and there's mental effects from that. On top of that, when you have autophagy increasing, your body's nutrient partitioning. So this is a term that refers to how your body, how efficiently it utilizes nutrients, how efficiently it utilizes food. Fasting dramatically increases nutrient partitioning efficiency. So when you are in a fasted state, your body will digest and absorb and make use of any kind of caloric intake you have much more effectively than during a normal non-fasting period. So what you're fighting for yourself during Ramadan is that from being in a fasted state and from being in a state of autophagy where your body's cleaning yourself up, your body's insulin sensitivity, your body's sort of carb utilization, that improves dramatically for you, and that's why you're not getting the typical effects that you would normally get during your your normal eating routine during the rest of the year.
Okay, so if that's the case, then how come people sort of generally eat 3 times a day rather than, I guess, once a day?
Well, eating 3 times a day is it's something that's just very culturally ingrained. The thing with food intake is that if you look at the whole body of research over everything that's ever been studied with food, there is no superior way of eating that I can espouse and say this is how people should eat. The 3 square meals a day, that's just very culturally ingrained. Where let's just say going back to agricultural revolution, when people just performed much more manual labor, you'd wake up in the morning, you'd eat a meal because you would be physically working for a while. You'd take a respite during lunch period, eat again, perhaps nap. You'd go back to working, and then you'd eat again, later in the evening. For a very physically active lifestyle, that can work well. Now, relative to modern era, very few people are performing that level of physical labor anymore. They're just not. If you're somewhere you're working in let's say or maybe you're on your feet, but you're not expending that level of energy, then you want to change your eating habits to suit your lifestyle that way. So eating once a day, that actually can be very beneficial for health. That is a form of intermittent fasting, but intermittent fasting, or just like going periods without eating every day, that has been shown in both humans and in animals, and just the overall body of research. That's been shown to be very beneficial for both quality of life, for health, and for overall longevity. People that eat calorie controlled in that fashion, they generally live longer and they have less health issues.
I remember reading an article on T Nation one time. TC Luama wrote that he was having a bit of trouble with his digestion because he was eating 5 or 6 meals a day. But when he reduced it from sort of 3 to 4, his blood glucose level improved, and his body composition improved, just because he was giving his body space to sort of be free of digesting food. So
yes.
It doesn't necessarily need to be 1 or 2 times a day. You can have the same effect by, I guess, eating 3 times a day, because if they were spaced out sufficiently, then you have a significant period in between where your body is not digesting food, right?
Yeah, exactly. The thing to understand with human health is that it goes in waves. It is something of a continuum. If you're at a stage where, let's say you want to train 5 days a week and you want to be lifting, almost every day, then it would probably be to your benefit to have, frequent meals, or just, to have, keep your amino acid levels up in your blood so you recover properly. But understand at the same time that your body is not unlimited. Your body is not infinite in its energy capabilities. You want to have periods where you allow your body to consolidate, to stabilize, where you allow it to, sort of cure itself, of the stress you've been putting it through. So you're eating and your meals over the course of, like a year or multiple years and months. Yeah, you can go through periods where you eat frequently and eat all the time, but it will happen that you will also want to go through periods where you lower your calorie intake, where you lower your meal frequency, and you give your body that respite. So just, it goes, you could say, as a metaphor, it goes with the seasons. You have periods where you want to be high expenditure, high intake. You will want to have periods where you'll want to be low expenditure and low intake. And that will allow you to modulate your health over the long term.
Right. And you're a big proponent of, I guess, bodybuilding, quote unquote bodybuilding style training, and that seems a little out of place nowadays, because what I see mostly is everybody's promoting, I guess, barbell training. Powerlifting is becoming is more and more mainstream, and you have people promoting Olympic lifting and training for strength in general. Why would you take? It's not a contrarian position, but it seems contrarian in the fitness rider space.
Yes. The thing that with Elite FTS, ironically enough, I don't promote. Let's just say I do not promote strength training, Olympic lifting, powerlifting. At the same time, though, I have a very high level of technical expertise in instructing the barbell lifts. I would personally consider myself to be pretty good at it. However, that has to be taken in context relative to the health of the average man, and relative to what will keep him healthiest and is most sustainable. Training in a moderate intensity manner with high repetitions, that is going to stimulate the most muscle growth over the long term. That is going to be most sustainable over the long term. That's going to be relatively injury-free, assuming he doesn't do anything, out of character. When you're talking about powerlifting and lifting at higher intensities, that requires both a muscular and technical coordination base that most people simply do not have. So powerlifting is not bad in the sense of belief, why would you never recommend it? But it's ill-advised for the average person, as they have neither the muscularity or the experience lifting to, one, be good at it, and two, the benefits of it are rather limited. I can have a client spend 9 months out of the year in a hypertrophy style of training, and then for 3 months I can have him do a powerlifting style training. And when I say powerlifting, I'm referring to lifting low rep, very high intensity, and that will sort of neurologically, let us say, level him up and increase his strength, but that's going to do very little to actually improve his muscularity. Mm-hmm. At the same time, as you age as a man, your ability to hit maximal lifts and to sort of take it to the 100% limit, that will start to decrease because the risk of injury will go up. So when I talk about bodybuilding style training, I'm not speaking of in the sense of sort of the, the superficial hedonistic bodybuilder. It's from a sensibility of what will keep you healthiest and what will allow you to maximize your lean body mass. Relative to this state of science and historical evidence, moderate to high rep lifting, that is the most effective way to accomplish that. Now, relative to someone's own like sort of psychological desires or psychological needs, where they want to feel like they're really straining against weight, or they want to be smashing weight in the gym and hitting a PR, that is fine. I will not discourage somebody from doing that, but it has to be done with some intelligence. And for something like Olympic lifting as well, you're talking about activities that Olympic lifting demands a very high level of flexibility. It demands a certain anthropometric biomechanical body type that is well suited for it. For most people attempting to Olympic lift, they'll find that it is ill suited to their structure, and they'll also find that it is not that effective at actually building lean body mass. And it's also very joint stressful. So it can be fine to do as a hobby per se, but again, speaking to the longevity and to the overall health aspect, it's not going to be that beneficial. It will be fun, but it's not going to be the most effective thing you could be doing for yourself.
Okay, so I guess that means you're looking at it from the perspective of what is going to keep this guy in the gym for, decades rather than just a few years and getting burnt out, right? I think that's something that sort of, Jim Wendler sort of talks about as well when in his 5-3-1 program. That's a sort of powerlifting style program, but he advocates lower weight. You start off with a lower sort of training weight and then you move up very, very slowly, because the focus is on building strength over decades rather than years.
Yeah, no, 5-3-1 is a phenomenal programming philosophy. And another program I advocate a lot is called Fifth Set by Swede Burns. Similar vein of thinking that your training weights, you're starting off at a lower intensity, you're taking your 1 rep max, you're taking off 10%, you're calculating that out down to about 70%. And, it may not be satisfactory to somebody where, well, I could lift heavier weight. Yeah, you could, but relative to keeping you building strength and building muscle the longest, we need to keep things moderate. And Wendler's perspective, Burns' perspective, my own perspective is the longer I can keep you in the gym, the stronger you're going to end up anyways.
Yeah, true.
If you skew it towards wanting to, like I said, try and lift heavier to satisfy your ego, it's more than likely, and I speak this from both personal experience and seeing what's happened with friends, it's more than likely that you will get hurt and you will take yourself out of the game of lifting, and then now your health's going to suffer in the long term. And all it was for a few years that you felt like you were Mr. Billy Badass in the gym because you were trying to lift as heavy as you could.
Yeah.
So for the young guy or for the guy in their 30s, do you want to be 50 and be sort of in the prime of your life, or do you want to have to stop in 5 years and now you're having to rehab and keep your body together up until your end? What's quality of life? What's going to be better?
Right. I hear this this thing. It's quite common where people, like trainers, will say that it's difficult to, learn the Olympic lifts or course the Olympic lifts. For me, I think I taught myself how to power clean by just reading Ripato's Starting Strength, and then I taught myself how to clean and jerk. And I taught myself the Olympic press, actually, the explosive way of doing it, where you sort of turn yourself into a bull. And then I think I sort of taught myself how to snatch as well. I can get into a snatch, but that's a lot harder. So it seems strange to me that this is so common that people say that it's very difficult to learn how to Olympic lift when, my form is not impeccable, but I can get under the bar, and it seems fairly okay.
Yeah. Well, this may depend on just your personal structure. Some people, like every once in a while, I will have those clients that I worked with where they could do the Olympic lifts this kind of from the outset because they have the shoulder and hip flexibility and really just the bone structure where their body can accommodate it. For the
majority of people, what you'll find is they lack shoulder flexibility, they lack spinal hip flexibility, or they lack muscular stability, some combination thereof, where it makes teaching the lifts very, very, very difficult. So for them, you might be talking about spending 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months simply getting flexible enough to get underneath the bar, and then from there, we haven't even talked about really loading, the bar with any kind of physical weight to really build any muscle tissue. So it comes down to a cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah.
I've seen people where they get into like the sunk cost fallacy, where I'm going to spend 8 months trying to work on this, and in those 8 months, their actual improvements to their health are very marginal. Versus I can have them start doing this more basic compound lifting, and they can essentially start building muscle right away. So that's something that's very easy to screen for. Simply having someone that's do an overhead squat test from the beginning of training. If they can do that, from the day they walk into the gym or get back into the gym, more than likely they could experiment with cleans and snatches and jerks. If they can't do that, and it is to the point where it's almost impossible, then they're going to have to change their starting point.
Right. And is it for that reason that, for example, you would not advocate doing some of the higher risk or higher difficulty gymnastic moves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this comes down to risk versus reward. I wouldn't discourage anyone from trying something, and attempting it just to see you may be well suited for it. And obviously, I don't know everyone's body structure, so I'm not there to make an educated suggestion. But you just want to keep in mind that if you're going to attempt something and the likelihood of injury is high, then either do it in a controlled setting and do it for the sake of do it for the purpose that, okay, I'm just going to experiment in this, have fun with it. If you're attempting something that you've never tried before, it looks, and you're dubious of your own capability of completing it, you only have to injure yourself one time to not be able to train again.
Yeah,
I've seen this with let's say like you're snatching, for example. If the bar goes backwards and you tear your shoulder, now you can't really do anything, and you might be out training for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, even a year to allow that to heal and rehab. So is that worth it to you?
True. It's interesting. I just said that I taught myself Olympic lifts, but I can't do a pistol squat to save my life. And pull-ups are like a nightmare. Like gymnastics is like not my thing.
That's all right. I have clients that are pretty muscular and they're very fit, and they're terrible at pull-ups for some people. Pull-ups, it's one of those movements that if you can do a few of them, great, but you'll be surprised the number of great athletes that can't do pull-ups. Strongmen, for example, are infamous for obviously being sickeningly strong with the loads they can move. A personal example, I'm friends with Dimitar Sabatinov. He's I believe, I want to say Bulgarian. He's a top 5 strongman in the world. He owns the dumbbell one-hand press, 308-pound dumbbell that he pressed overhead. He can't do pull-ups at all. Like if he used to try to do a pull-up, maybe he could do one if he jumps up to the bar. But relative to what he can do, he's world class at.
Yeah, true.
So, that's an example. But if you're muscular, where okay, I know my back's muscular, I know my hips are flexible. The 2 areas that I always tell people that if you can maintain strength in those areas, you will age well. Keep your hips flexible. Keep your back strong. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be able to do 20 pull-ups. That doesn't mean you have to do pistols. But if you can reasonably do body weight squats, if you can do 100 reps in a row, you can go down, you can squat down, sit in your heels. If you can pick things up and your back's not so weak, you're going to throw out your back. If you can keep your back strong, your hips strong, you will age well. If nothing else, it's those 2 areas. When your hip flexibility declines and your back, weakens and your spinal column weakens, then that's when you're going to start running into degeneration.
Right. So you would try to incorporate a lot of squatting movements and a lot of rowing type movements just to keep the whole, I guess, back end in good shape.
Yeah, precisely. That is, the technical term is posterior chain. If you can keep your posterior chain strong, since you have to view this almost from a sensibility of what is gravity pulling down on. So gravity is compressing your spine, gravity is compressing your hips. So aging, in a way, is a fight against gravity. If you can keep your spinal column upright and reinforced, and you can keep your hips pliable and fluid, you're going to age well. And as you just said, law of squatting, law of rows, and just those two things alone would improve most people's health, in due time.
I remember Dan John saying in an interview that, if like this middle-aged mom comes into his gym for the first time, he's just gonna let her do a few goblet squats and a few hip, some swings, some hinges, and then send her home, and then that'll be enough for her.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to start getting someone to improve. For the new clients that I have, or like even for the guys that are new to the gym, an effective workout that will progress quickly. If it's let's just say lower body, you do some type of squatting variation, a goblet squat, an assisted squat, a bodyweight squat. You do some hip extension of some kind, a swing, a bodyweight deadlift, a bodyweight hyperextension. You can hit some sort of rowing movement, a face pull, a bodyweight row. And you get some stimulus that way, and then that's it. It could be 3 or 4 things. And as Dan John said, you're going to start noticing benefits pretty swiftly. It doesn't take a lot. Anything over 0 is 100% over 0. If you go from 0 to 1, that is a massive increase in what you're doing.
Right. You spoke a little bit earlier about the testosterone levels. I read there are a lot of articles out there about how to sort of increase your testosterone naturally. How much of that is legit, and how much is bro science?
Unfortunately, a lot of that is bro science. The thing to understand with testosterone levels is, let's say you are a gentleman where you're in your 30s, and I'll say this for everyone listening: your testosterone levels, if your testosterone levels are low, it's not going to be the physical aspect that you notice. It will be the mental aspect. When testosterone levels drop, mental cognition and overall this, let's just say like emotional happiness, satisfaction, that will go down. Testosterone drives a lot of feel-good hormones in the brain. So if you're a man and you're 35 and you feel very listless and depressed and lethargic, you could very well have low testosterone levels. Now, elevating testosterone naturally, if it is low, and let's just say it's 200, then you're going to require more than likely TRT, which is testosterone replacement therapy, and you'll need to talk to your physician about that. And TRT would involve, usually the most efficient form is injecting yourself every other day or twice a week with a low dose of testosterone. This is not a steroid dose of testosterone. This is a low dose of testosterone, and it brings your levels back up to high normal. Now, if you're a gentleman, let's say your testosterone levels are relatively normal, let's say they're 400, which is on the lower end, but that is normal range, and you want to bring them up, what can you really do? There's not a whole lot that you can do that will dramatically increase them. You might be able to raise it 200 points, perhaps, maybe 400 to 600, maybe 600 to 800. But don't expect these vast physical benefits. We're not talking about taking steroids. We're just talking about just essentially cognitively, mentally feeling better. So it is a lot of bro science where you'll hear, like, if you do like compound lifts, or if you do squatting, those are testosterone anabolic lifts. They're really not. Just stimulating muscle tissue in general through any kind of lifting can elevate testosterone levels a little bit. The big things that drive testosterone levels really are this lifestyle: getting adequate sleep, minimizing stress, having enough healthy fat in your diet. So omega-3 fatty acids, eggs, getting enough cholesterol in. Cholesterol is actually a hormonal precursor form to testosterone. So a high cholesterol diet can, in fact, sometimes elevate testosterone levels pretty markedly. That's not to say it will work for everybody, but just increasing, start adding eggs into your diet could, in fact, raise your testosterone levels. Another thing that could affect it is actually zinc and magnesium. Zinc levels, if you are deficient in zinc, that can elevate testosterone sometimes somewhat significantly, maybe about 25%. It can take you back into normal range if it's a little low. And then the same thing for magnesium as well. When magnesium is low in the body, which is, it's very hard to ascertain low magnesium levels, just because the symptoms are very similar to, the symptoms of low magnesium are depression, low energy, lethargy, muscle cramps, like general muscle pain. So, and that could also go along with having low test. It could be one and the same. But magnesium levels being low, if you increase magnesium levels in the body, magnesium citrate is the
oral form of magnesium you want to take, that could elevate testosterone levels as well. But I say all this, but just keep in mind that if you are hearing this and thinking, okay, I'm a supplement with zinc, I'll supplement with magnesium, vitamin D3 could elevate testosterone, change my diet. Don't expect to go from zero to Superman, overnight. I'm talking more about quality of life increases where you'll have more energy, you'll feel a little bit stronger, and that's about it. You're not going to add slabs of muscle to your frame because you started squatting and eating eggs and now your testosterone is at super physiological levels.
Damn, I was hoping for that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it is both bro science and real science. Where yes, you can elevate it, but it just when you elevate it, it never happens. Anyone thinks it does. I've had guys elevate their testosterone from 400 to 800, and the biggest difference is, wow, I have so much more energy. But physique wise, it's not like they added 20 pounds of muscle. They just feel better now than they did before.
So what's the difference there? So you said that what happens is something that's mental and physiological rather than physical. What is the difference between that kind of testosterone increase versus the steroid kind of testosterone, which increases your strength and muscle mass and things like that?
Yes, so that's a good question. Muscle growth is very dependent upon testosterone levels. It is. Now, for muscle growth to really increase, you need to have what's called a super physiological level of testosterone in the body. So normal range of testosterone, like we said earlier, it's about 300 to 1100. Now, if your testosterone falls within that range, and let's just say it is at the higher end, you'll probably find that you grow muscle no one ever grows muscle as fast as they like. That never happens. But you will get more muscular from resistance training at a normal rate. When you supplement with exogenous testosterone, where let's say you take an actual steroidal dose of testosterone, your testosterone levels will go up into like the 2000 range. So they will be double that of a normal man. At that level, muscle protein synthesis and muscle growth will rapidly accelerate because you've now pushed your body's bioavailable hormones in your bloodstream. You've now pushed it to a level that your own body could never produce, ever. So that's what makes the difference in muscle growth. When I talk about testosterone replacement therapy, I'm just saying that you want to have your testosterone levels at the high end of normal. So at that level, you're not going to notice any huge muscle changes, with muscle growth. You might get a little more muscular, a little bit, but it'll be marginal. Since again, we're within our normal range of testosterone. We're basically pushing our body to the level they could produce on its own. When you go above and beyond that level, that's where you see the profound muscle building effects where guys will add 10, 20, 30 pounds of literal lean body mass to their frame. And at that level, that's where you obviously visually and physically you'll notice, oh my God, I'm stronger, I'm faster, I feel more powerful. Obviously, frame wise, I'm way bigger. But that's a different level of dosage.
And say you're on the low end of that testosterone and you go on TRT to bring it up to high normal. Does that affect your body's ability to produce testosterone on its own, or is that just when you take the super high dose of exogenous testosterone?
Oh no, it absolutely no. Whether you take a low dose of testosterone or a high dose, you will affect your body's ability to produce testosterone. So this is where you really have to consider the overall implications of if you're going to go on TRT. If you are a gentleman and you have not had kids yet and you have very low testosterone, you're hypogonadal, you have to consider that, okay, if I go on TRT, that may affect my fertility. I'm going to have to really actively manage my reproductive health. And I'm going to have to, as I just said, be aware of the implications. Now, it doesn't mean it shuts down your testosterone levels where they can never go back up, but it will mean that, it will affect you, and it may very well affect your ability to reproduce. Now, if you're a gentleman where you've already had kids and your testosterone is low, and you go on exogenous testosterone, you go on TRT, keep in mind that you're going to have to be on it essentially for the rest of your life. So this is why I recommend that gentlemen explore TRT, I do not advocate that if your testosterone levels are a bit low, that you absolutely just go start taking it. Go ask your doctor for a prescription. Really do your research and consider what you could change with your lifestyle, your diet, your overall state of existence. If you could get your testosterone from low to normal, from normal to high, just through lifestyle changes, do that. Now, but if you are truly hypogonadal, where testosterone is incredibly low, and you know that your quality of life has really suffered, then yes, TRT will be your only real option, but it's going to be a lifelong commitment.
Right. So at that point, it's sort of like a medical necessity, I guess, rather than just something you do for vanity's sake.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
that's a very good way of phrasing it.
And I think it's interesting that you said that the benefits of, I guess, like optimal sort of testosterone are, psychological and mental, whereas usually when you're talking about popular culture and media, the phrase high testosterone has a sort of negative connotation to it, whereas the way you're explaining it right now, testosterone is just the substance or the hormone that lets men be beneficial men in society.
Yes. So testosterone gets very demonized by the media, and something to keep in mind, and this is very meta perspective, testosterone levels, they actually rise and fall with solar radiation levels. So I know this is a totally different subject to start talking about, but there's often been talk, if you look at the research and you look at this overall, the state of Western society, testosterone levels are at an all-time low in men. So the average testosterone level today in a man is about 400. 50 years ago, it was about 700. And this has been blamed on, endocrine disruptors. It's been blamed upon, plastics in the environment, and it's been blamed upon diet. It's been blamed upon obesity,
feminism.
But yeah, feminism. Feminism. I could go off on feminism for a while, but it begs the question. Why has testosterone dropped? Because as testosterone has dropped and men's estrogen levels have gotten higher, you've seen the rise of third and fourth wave feminism. You've seen the rise of radical feminism. I know. I mean, you yourself have seen the rise of Islamic radical feminists. How in God's name that makes sense? I have no idea.
It doesn't. I wrote an article about it.
It makes no sense. It makes zero sense. But you see the rise of these weird subcultures. They're very, estrogenic and very, sort of like man-hating and masculinity-hating, and they really drive this culture of testosterone being bad, testosterone, the connotation being very negative. Why is testosterone low? Testosterone levels, as I said, they rise and fall with the solar radiation. So the sun goes through 1,000-year solar cycles in which solar radiation increases and solar radiation declines. Testosterone levels are actually, as I said before, they're kind of dependent upon vitamin D3 levels, and they're also very driven by exposure to sunlight. If you get very little sun, if I took you right now and stuck you in a dark room for a month with no sunlight exposure, your testosterone levels would drop. They would. Because your D3 levels would drop and your cholesterol levels would decline, and your overall your testosterone production, it would go down. Right now, the solar radiation cycle is at a low, and it's at a major low. So solar radiation is at a major low. People are outside less than they've ever been. Men are outside less than they've ever been. So testosterone levels as a whole in society, they've all gone down. What has gone up is estrogen levels, and thanks to a lot of radical movements, testosterone has now become a demonized word across much of society. The unfortunate thing about this is that testosterone, as you said, essentially is what makes men useful. A man with low testosterone is not very useful. He's not going to feel very useful. He's not going to be very useful. So testosterone, when we talk about testosterone, we're promoting a positive form of aggression, a positive form of risk-taking, a positive form of health. This is not just a sensibility of testosterone referring to machismo and aberrant sexuality. This is testosterone relative to your identity, your physical health, your mental well-being, and your usefulness to yourself and to society. If your testosterone level is low, you're going to be a liability.
Yeah, I mean they call it toxic masculinity, but I guess when the shit hits the fan, it's the men that they want to protect the society, right? And for that protection to happen, so,
yes.
yeah.
The thing with toxic masculinity, yeah, I mean, you're getting me in like fire right now. But when you consider the implications of this, like masculinity is now toxic. So you're talking about people who, okay, they demonize the male role. They want to abolish the idea that masculinity does anything good. Objectively speaking, who built society? Who built the building that you're standing in? You know, who were the constructors and the makers of the world that allows you to sort of sit on the ivory tower throne and then start creating your own sense of morality and saying what is good or bad with human identity?
Mm.
You know, lest I remember, unless you look at history, any monument, anything that has been created, and I don't care what it is, I don't care if it's the Great Pyramid, I don't care if it's, you know, the sort of, you know, the Greek temples, Great Wall of China, Mecca, whatever, it was all built by men. Now, when testosterone drops to an all-time low, and now you can start criticizing the world that essentially, you know, men more or less have built, who is going to save you when the world starts falling apart? You know, because fundamentally speaking, it's one of those politically incorrect things to say. It has not been women that build things. It is men that build things. So on a physical level, when life falls apart, who protects you? Who saves you? It's not going to be a trans radical feminist, whatever the hell. It's going to be a man. So when you put men in the position of telling them that they're useless, when your world falls apart, there is no one to catch you. You know, you are committing yourself to your own, you know, social suicide.
I think it also goes a little bit. It goes beyond the, I guess, the physicality of, you know, building things. It's like the mental as well, isn't it? So if you think about, you know, the main driver of human knowledge and human understanding, the vast majority would be the male minds. Wouldn't you say that's correct?
I would say that's correct. You know, testosterone drives, you know, in the brain, it drives risk-taking. Testosterone drives asking questions about the world that you live in. It drives understanding. It drives the desire to try to learn. You know, there's a reason why men gravitate towards scientific fields, why men gravitate towards building, why men gravitate towards, these STEM fields in engineering, in these realms of thinking that have to do with creation and knowledge acquisition and study. That's a tradition in many religions and cultures in which men are scholars and they are studying for the sake of trying to better understand the world and better serve the world. That is a testosterone characteristic. It is. So when you strip that from society, you are essentially committing yourself to a state of non-thinking. You will not run on rationality and reason. You will fall to the state of thinking by emotion. And emotion does not create emotion, raw emotion, unchecked emotion, without discipline. That does not create anything. That does not build anything. That does not produce anything.
This is another excerpt from one of your podcasts. I actually wrote it out and posted it on my Facebook page. The lamentation of modern men is that they have no purpose. You have an entire generation of boys and men who have been raised in a largely emasculated society in which the idea of positive aggression and masculine purpose have been stripped from them. I was listening while I was researching your work and listening to your podcast. This is one that I think I've listened to this particular podcast at least 4 times because it's so hype. Yeah, this is good stuff. I think you should, the podcasts that you put out are really, high quality, as good as your writing. You should think about doing them a lot more. Where can people find your work?
The best place would, by far, it would be the website, which is the full name, AlexanderJuanAntonioCortes.com. You can find me on Facebook as well, same name. I do have a Twitter handle, AJA_Cortes. And then if anyone wants to contact me directly, I do make my email address available, Cortes.AJ ajax.training@gmail.com. That's my personal email address if anyone wants to correspond.
Okay, so I'll leave that. I'll put those links in the blog post when this goes up. Where else do you write? Do you guest post anywhere?
Yes, yeah. Probably the best place for this, the regularly occurring guest posts would be elitefts.com. I have a bi-monthly column there that is somewhat more this health-minded, but I do talk about sort of purpose and living a lot, within those columns as well. And there's about 3-4 years worth at this point. So if anyone wanted to go back and sort of read a length of articles that touch upon different aspects of health and living and philosophy and how to think about your role and your place in learning, there's about 80 articles there, I think, that you could pour through.
And can people contact you to purchase training services from you, either online or in person?
Yes. Yeah. Anyone that is interested in training in any capacity, whether it be consultation or just trying to figure out direction, I do work with people on a monthly and in some cases yearly basis. I offer that. I have a number of training programs available for gentlemen that just want some guidance as to what to do in the gym. They can do that as well. And then I do offer actually in person. I'm currently based out of Florida right now. I'll be in the Baltimore area, possibly within the next year or so. But if anyone wants to explore in-person training, you can obviously find me at my location, currently in Vero Beach, Florida. And I do offer a sort of in-house training where I have a space. I have actually a room set up where people can stay, with myself if they want to interact and spend time, over the course of a week. And in that case, that's obviously we can cover and talk about and go into any subject you want, and also spend time in the gym, and you can really maximize learning in that regard.
So the last one is the superhero transformation, where the people will come and live with you, and then you turn them into like Wolverine, right?
Yes. If someone really wanted to commit to that, I do offer that. You could stay for a week, you could stay for a month, but if you're trying to really learn the totality of what it takes to make that kind of lifestyle transformation, you're committed to the idea, I can show you, I can teach that to you, and I'll be with you pretty much 24/7 doing that. But that could that would be a profound change for most people, but it may be the most dramatic change you ever make in your life relative to yourself and your health. So, I have done that before for clients.
There's a writer called Illimitable Man. He has this article called Monk Mode, where you basically go you become a hermit just to focus on one particular aspect of your life. I think this would be one of those examples, right?
Yes, reinvention. If you truly want to commit to reinvention, it is an obsession. It can be done slow. It can be done moderately. It can be done over time. But if you are zealously, in love with the idea of recreating yourself, that is something that requires, as I said, totality of purpose. It is an all or nothing sort of endeavor. So take it, as you said, go into monk mode and live for nothing else.
I'll tell you what, I've been sort of researching by myself. I've never actually purchased training from anyone. I've been researching training and nutrition for about, 8 years now. If I could pay a large sum of money to stay with someone for 8 to 12 weeks and just, fix that aspect of my life once and for all, I think that would be, worth the investment.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Yeah, I've had people that I've worked with for up to 2 or 3 years. And ideally, you can take it from a standpoint of I just want to learn a few things to apply. But if you are looking to sort of solve the riddle of yourself, and you want the expertise readily available to you to ask any and all questions you want, and to help guide you through that, definitely I'd be up for that.
And tell us about the book that you're working on right now.
The book. So the book is called The Art of Health. The book, it will cover 4 aspects: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. It is a series of essays that comprise what I consider sort of the pillars of each of those 4 corners. So there'll be 32 subjects in total.
The book, it is designed to, it's designed to help anybody on a physical level, help people on a mental level, help them on an emotional, or help them guide them on a spiritual. So it covers what I consider like the 4 pillars of a human being. And each subject, some of them are very simple, like the physical, for example, it covers energy intake, it covers understanding muscle, it covers understanding training. So it's relevant and applicable points that you can immediately put into action in your life. And then the same for the other subjects. On the subject of spirituality and the subject of emotionality, is things where it can ask you the questions and it gives you pieces that you can put into play and consider and start applying on a day-to-day basis. So you could read it, full length and, sort of take it as a, broad global perspective on, how the art of living and how to live and how to be healthy. Or you could read it on a piece-by-piece basis and just take what applies to you. And that'll be coming out next year in the spring.
That sounds awesome. That's highly anticipated. One last thing. Tell us the, I guess, 3 to 5 of like your favorite people in the fitness space that you follow for, I guess, their insights into training and nutrition, or just for entertainment purposes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For training and nutrition, a very excellent guy, PD Manigan. He has a website called Rogue Health. He's a gentleman where he is autodidactic like myself. He just reads research, summarizes it, and this relates it back to how it applies to your own health with eating, with exercise, with lifestyle. Rogue Health, a very good website. For someone that, somewhat is in the health realm, not lately, but he has in the past, obviously Mike Cernovich. For men, I highly recommend reading his website just to get you thinking, considering your, role in society differently. Very, very good website there. Health and fitness. I would suggest people that are interested in the technical side of things to explore elitefts.com. There's just a wealth of articles there that you can draw upon. You can kind of look up any subject and get some very, very high level information on it. All of it's free, and it's all written to be usable for anybody, both at a low level and at a high level. Another gentleman that he has it's a good website, and it actually helps for personality, which I think is very helpful for men in helping to understand the best way to sort of go about taking action on themselves. But The Artful Man, he has a website that's pretty fascinating. It covers a much more human psychology, but for somebody that's looking to make changes of any kind, it's helpful to, as I said, do some self-analysis and get an objective sense of who you are. And his website's pretty excellent for that.
Okay. Alexander Juan Antonio Cortes, personal trainer, author, philosopher as well, I guess, ballerina, and all-round wise guy. Thank you very much, Alex, for your time. I really appreciate you coming on. Can you stay on the line, please, when we're done?
Absolutely. Thank you, Nabil. I've definitely enjoyed this.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure, Alex.
Likewise.
All right. That is the end of our episode of BecomingTheAlphaMuslim.com. If you enjoyed listening, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher. All of the links to the resources that were discussed during the episode will be made available when I write the show notes up, and you'll find them in the blog post as well. So thank you very much. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.